It's science time with Hoover and Sparrow.
Let's listen to The Moon Book, and then we're going to do a fun activity to follow about moon phases. The Moon Book. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in the night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small points of light. Some planets have many moons. Earth has one. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It's about 238,900 miles away. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. It is about 1/4 the size of Earth. It is made up of rock and dust, and there is no air or sign of life. Most astronomers and other scientists think our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Diana. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Some American Indian tribes believed the moon and sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face, the man in the moon, who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of moon demons living there. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around Earth. The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing Earth. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of light being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the positions of the Earth, moon, and sun. During a new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and Earth. The moon looks dark and we see no reflected light. In a few days, a bit of sunlight side of the moon shows and it forms a crescent. When the moon is 1/4 of the way around the Earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called the half moon. When the moon is waxing between the first quarter moon and a full moon, it is called a gibbous moon. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon, and now the entire face of the moon we see shines. When the moon's waning between a full moon and the last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. When the moon is 3/4 of its way around the Earth, it is in its last quarter phase, and again we see it as half lit, and it is sometimes called a half moon. Once again, we see a small sliver of the moon shining in the sky. It takes the moon about 1 month to go through its entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month by watching the moon's phases. The moon's orbit around the Earth is usually tilted slightly compared to the Earth's orbit around the sun. Because of this, the moon cannot exactly line up between the sun and the Earth. But when the moon's orbit is not tilted, the moon lines up exactly between the sun and the Earth, and a solar eclipse happens. The moon's shadow falls on the Earth, and a solar eclipse can last up to 7½ minutes. When the sun, Earth, and moon are exactly lined up, a lunar eclipse happens. As in a solar eclipse, the moon's orbit is not tilted. The Earth blocks off the sunlight that usually lights up the moon, and the moon has a reddish glow. Lunar comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. A lunar eclipse can last up to 3½ hours. The moon affects the oceans too. The moon's pull, called gravity, on the ocean is strong enough to cause tides Tides are the daily rising and falling of the ocean's water. This is because the moon takes about 25 hours to come back to the same place in the sky it was the night before. Tide difference varies around the world. Some night sky gazers and astronomers can get a close-up view of the moon by looking through binoculars, others through telescopes. Some huge telescopes are used at observatories. A close-up view of the moon's surface shows dark patches astronomers call plains or seas. Other areas are covered with craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon's craters were formed between 3.5 and 4.5 billion years ago when meteors pounded its surfaces. For centuries, people have wanted to know more about our moon. In 1959, the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 transmitted to Earth the first pictures of the far side or back of the moon. There aren't as many dark areas on that side as the side we see from Earth. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a commitment to put Americans on the moon before the end of the decade. At first, many American unmanned spacecraft were sent. Pictures were taken, then Surveyor 1 landed on the moon in 1966. It sent back information about the moon's surface. The first manned orbit of the moon was made by Apollo 8 astronauts in 1968. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edward Buzz Aldrin of the Apollo 11 mission became the first men to walk on the moon. There were 5 more Apollo landings on the moon. The last one, Apollo 17, was in 1972. The astronauts did experiments and gathered samples. Astronomers and other scientists were able to learn more about the history and the nature of our moon. On a clear night when the moon is in the sky, gaze up at it. We are still learning more about our closest neighbor, the moon.
It's time to blast off. Don't tell us the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon.
We hope you astronauts enjoyed the moon book.
In the moon book, we learned about moon phases, and it gives you the names and what they look like. So today we would like you to make a representation with a challenge that we have for you.
So today with that challenge, you are going to need something that I think a lot of you are going to enjoy. And this is where you might have mom and dad go to the store for you if they haven't yet to get you some Oreos.
So you'll start by twisting them apart.
Yep.
This one is perfect. That looks like a full moon, doesn't it?
Yes.
So I could put that on my plate and write a full moon under it.
Yep.
How would you do a different one, Mrs. Hoover?
Well, and then if mine came out a full moon, but then I thought I need a different phase of the moon, you know what would be nice and fun? If you wanted to eat this, you could lick it and eat it, or if you wanted to, you could take a craft stick or a spoon and you could scrape it off to make another phase of the moon. So if you made another phase, you could make a crescent moon. And then you can lay that on your plate and you could label that. So that's our challenge today, is see if you could make maybe 3 or 4 different phases of the moon with your Oreos.
And make sure that you identify them by writing the name of that phase of the moon.
Yep. We'd love to see those.
So if you want to snap a picture of those, if you're in my class, you could go to Class Dojo and log in with your home login.
And on my class, you could go to our class tag. Or again, if you're not, you could put a comment on this video. So fly us to the moon and let's see your moon phases.
Can't wait to see them.